And then thank you everyone for joining us for this conversation today. Uh, in the last 2-3 years, as you mentioned, and then just supply chain conversations around resilience, around traceability, around some of those issues have been so many. It just tells you about one, the challenges that the industry is facing and the opportunities. Where there are challenges, there will be opportunities. So that is so important today. And that is what broadly gets me to this introduction. So over 90 minutes, we'll try and dissect some of those opportunities, talk about some of the emerging opportunities, and of course, what more can industry do in partnership with policymakers. I'd like to believe that startups are a very important part of the change that's happening. They lend the agility to the established names. So let's start. The last 2-3 years, the boardrooms, what they've seen is so many conversations around the challenges being faced by supply chain. They've also discussed, along with policymakers, the China Plus One strategy and the importance of sustainability and the digital supply chain that we need for tomorrow, so that those shocks probably can be taken and, of course, efficiencies at scale that it can bring about. So that's why it's so important that we're in the automobile hub, one of the most important automobile hubs of India. Almost 30% of India's automobiles. So in that context, let me start with the first question, and I'll come to you, Keerthi. The India-wide opportunity in terms of, while today we are focused on the automotive sector, this could very well be the India story as well. How do you see it? Yeah, this will work. Yeah.
So, especially in automotive sector, see, like first of all, automotive sector is like consistently growing. It's like by 2026, it may become almost 300 billion business, and in our OEM point of view. But if you look into the components point of view, it may grow up maybe like more than 100 or near to 100 billion components. So what large scale it's changing in India, it's throwing a lot of opportunities, because like the GCCs, which we are increasingly, like every week one GCC is getting started in India, and more than like almost 30 to 40% of the GCCs are focusing on automobile market. That means that there is a big change or shift happening in the technology development area, the D&D, which was not the one before. At the same time, if you see the supplier base or supply chain point of view, if you see like earlier, like 20 years back, like the supply chain was limited to only the basic components. Today we've evolved from labor jobs to high-tech components. Still long way to go if you consider some of the key components like electronic components as well as some precision components. But apart from that, India has moved. Going forward, what I believe actually automobile will lead India's economic growth, and the biggest growth will come when these R&D investments and the supply chain development happens.
That's so important. You want to add something? Sure.
I want to add one comment. As you rightly said, around one area which we wanted to focus is a lot of component exports. I'm talking about component exports, which traditionally focus on the core components, engines, transmissions. That's how it was done so far. With the technology migrations happening much faster in the Western world compared to India, and talk about migration of ICE to the EV segments, this is also one of the opportunity that our supply base in India can also look at how fast we upgrade ourselves to start from day one. Because traditionally, the sourcing of components from India was majority from a resourcing point. Technology is available, somebody want to source it at low cost country. But I don't think we should wait for that cycle for the next wave. So we should be prepared to start from day one when companies are moving. So that's one area we should look at as an opportunity. You touched upon the technology center like electronics, semiconductors, how we can be from day one be a hub for exports, not come at a second loop of the cycle.
Okay, so if two of the largest companies, at least in today's conversation, are talking about that opportunity, how do you see it, Ganesh, in terms of the opportunity? What right steps should we take now so that the fruits can be visible maybe 10 years later?
Okay, thanks very much, Ashutosh, for having me here. I see in two different aspects of it. One is about when you talk about a sourcing for the global market, it comes through two important routes. One is the way we as a OEM, as a part of fraternity, has always been focusing on a lot of products of us getting made here and send it across the world. If you say pass car, it's close to 15 to around 20%. And if you see CV right now, just at the uptick of it, a lot of African countries, Middle East, a lot of export countries that have been happening through CV segment as well, which is close to 6%. So that itself is giving a good amount of your presence to be present in the all over the world. So if I want to bisect this in a little more detailed manner, if you talk about pass car, it's more of getting it made and getting it as it is exported and get sold. And whereas the trucks from I come from, you cannot just like that keep on exporting, so much of cost getting involved. So what you do is you put it in a boxes and in terms of CKDs, SKDs. For example, as many plants what we have in India, 9. We do have 10 plants outside the country as well. So that's how your global presence can be felt out there. This is a simple and clear-cut path what is going on. The second thing is about the way the component industry itself has been preparing itself for, one more decade to come. The first thing, they in fact breached the $21 billion mark this year on export alone, out of the $71.4 billion mark which they have done business, the last year holistically, which means that at least 30% of your volumes are directly being taken care, by you yourself exporting. How does that happen? So being a person who also worked in pass car, what my experience is that as the companies keep working on first and foremost in the way quality levels are being maintained, and the way the consistency, that's what the supply chain resilience comes into picture. If these two things gets some amount of confidence to the customer, especially the OEM customers, I think they just open out box. Incidentally, my neighbor, sitting Rane, I think it is initially 2 or 3 years of initial struggle, I would say, to really make an inroad into a company like Hyundai. But after that, it's an open box for everybody. They have got around presence of 240 different countries. You become a global supplier to them. So similarly, each and every component suppliers have also been putting their own effort. So it's a two-pronged strategy in terms of how you are actually going through OEMs, which makes a presence felt. Being a made in India product gets sold in much more better way. The second thing is about on their own effort on doing that. Keeping the, kind of a combination of all these technologies, keeping quality up front, keeping resilient in terms of, assurance to the product supplies are concerned, which incidentally we have been doing a great job as a country. And I think that is what the pathway is going to be. I think it's in a right path, it's in a highway path right now.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear. And one example comes to mind straight away. That's Apple. And we've seen how Apple exports from India have multiplied. So Ramanan, when India talks of that, or a lot of people, I won't say just the business leaders, the corporate, the policymakers have also been talking of India's role in that China Plus One strategy. And surely there is ample opportunity for Indian companies. So, is India ready to make good of that opportunity? What are some of the things we need to address? He mentioned some. Can Apple serve as a great benchmark or example to drive that?
It's interesting that you're talking about Apple because of late in the last 6 to 9 months, there have been at least more than a handful of instances where Apple suppliers have actually reached out for setting up supply chains for component manufacturing, component distribution, etc., to serve the global market. And that opportunity is just, we've just touched the tip of the iceberg, and it's only bound to grow by leaps and bounds. The world is recognizing the efficiency, not just in the labor efficiency that we bring in, but also efficiencies around the structuring of the business models, the consistency that Ganesh was talking about, the rigor in terms of quality standards that can be executed consistently is something that it's a strength that India needs to actually leverage and message across the world. I would see it from 2 or 3 perspectives. One is the value that Indian component suppliers and the supply chain can actually bring in is definitely in the areas of trying to ride on the industry 4.0 in terms of the tech advantages that we can bring into the table, the skilled workforce that we can bring in, and which is all valued by global clients. And of course, the sheer domestic market size that can actually be a base for providing economies of scale. So that's, I think that's what makes India that much more attractive for multinationals or global leaders to look at India actively for not just the tapping into the Indian market, but also using India as a base for serving other global markets.
Okay. You wanted to come in? Please.
No, just like to add
Sure.
to what both Mr. Ganesh and Ramanan said. So 2 perspectives. One is, of course, the hygiene factors, like where we aspire to be on world-class quality standards. I think no longer are Indian companies struggling to meet. So it's sort of given that we prescribe to those standards. And I think 2 or 3 factors that are also making the shift of India becoming a larger export base. He spoke about nearly 1/3 revenue of the auto component industry being from exports. So one is, of course, technology migration. Like India as a country, earlier, if you look at Europe and India, the time lag between technology transition was nearly 6 to 7 years. Off late, I think BS6, when it came, it was shrunk to about 3.5 years. So as we go along, I think technology makes it, as it becomes seamless, more with virtue of, how do I say, global diversified information media, information systems, and all that. Once technology becomes seamlessly available, and the cost of capital differential reducing and pressures on capital, given the trend migration towards electrification and other developed economies, I think more and more global buy opportunities. I think we already see that with 3 of our customers here. We already do, when we produce for one platform in India, we also have an opportunity to sell it to other markets. So I think once you have that base frameworks in place, given, and you are quite capable in ensuring that you are quick to react in terms of timelines and development. So, and of course, costs, needless to add on costs. I think the export opportunities, you spoke of China +1. So there needs to be a large enough manufacturing base to be a component supply base to the global region. So definitely, in my personal opinion, both as a component maker and also as an individual, I think the next 10 years is going to be the year of manufacturing in India. I think the last was on software. So I think personally that the next 10 years, particularly for the ancillaries and even the tier 2s and the tier 3, so this is going to be a manufacturing boom, but it is my personal view.
Okay, that's
Just to
yeah,
add
sure.
some point, actually, like just taking some points from Ganesh and Rajesh. See, like even like same thing, like I reinforce that statement, like how to take the Indian suppliers. See, like China +1 is the like maybe talk of the town nowadays, but how to realize that? It's basically like if you see, irrespective of the things what happens all over the world or what other companies think, in India itself, its virtual size and the rapid growth opportunity, it presents significant opportunity for global companies to source from India. And also after especially COVID, many global companies, almost all global companies, realize that they need to diversify their supply chain. This will give ample of opportunities, and India is a front runner in that one. We must capitalize that opportunity. So for that opportunity capitalization, like the two things which we need to focus as an Indian, like startups or any existing suppliers. One, like the commodity, what we components which we choose, which nowadays like we are looking like global commodities. We are actually like entering through existing OEMs in India. Through that, we can multiply the volumes, the volume of scale advantage we can get. That is the one thing. And second thing is world is looking towards more than a contract manufacturer job, because earlier like India like contract job like we get and we complete and labor charges we get. We need to move towards like having our own products and investing in D&D or in R&D. So developing our own technologies. This is where China, if you see like the components, initially they started with contract manufacture, but today they are very good in design and developing the new products in component level. That's where I see as an opportunity. But if you take even Renault, Nissan as an example, like we export almost 3,000 components to all over the world. And out of that, maybe like almost 40 countries which we export. And the load, if you see, almost 600 containers every month we export to all over the world from India. Of course, collecting from suppliers like Rane and many other suppliers. So that's the great opportunity. We have to leverage the existing route, and also we need to find the new route to development and developing components. That's what I feel.
Yeah, sure. Please.
To the point that he mentioned, correct? I think what Mr. Ganesh also said is, I think India was seen as a low cost, but it is changing. But I think that's one thing which we need to say. It's not about cost; it's about value. Right? I think it's happening, but we need to. I think that's he also mentioned the point how consistent we are in terms of repeating in terms of quality, product ethics. So I think that's something which we should make it as a target, that we should wipe out this low cost image and then say it's a value creation, which is happening. But we need to go along with that. And adding to your point, what is it? No? The number of patents is more in China nowadays than US and Europe. That's the statistics available. The patents is more in China now. They are migrated towards more on advanced engineering, things like that. We are doing it, but maybe not in that sense.
So the need for companies to be agile comes in. And so I'll come to you. And how do startups lend agility and a future-looking ability so that companies can be long-term partners with startups? What will it take for startups to instill that confidence in the established companies?
So I'll actually revert back to the
Sure, please.
to the last point, because I think that's a very relevant starting point. So we talked about, say, China plus one as one of the, very imminent scenarios in front of us. So when you look at a situation like that, in reality, what you're really looking at is our ability to match or compete with China as another production base, supplier base, whatever you want to call it. Now, if you realistically look at the infrastructure that supports export and import in China, it's at least 10 years ahead of what we have on the ground in India. So the reality will bite at some point or the other, in that as a country we are not perhaps entirely prepared to deal with 1:1 competition with somebody like China. We could probably at a stretch do that with Thailand or do that with Vietnam, but definitely not with China, purely by looking at what they have on the ground, in which I don't mean just roads and highways and warehousing and ports and terminals, but including the capacity of the ships, the frequency of the ships, the cost advantage they have in reaching a market like the US, for example. So that we are still a little away from being on the same page with them. Okay, that's just realistically where we are. But at the same time, the opportunity is real. The opportunity is being thrown up on account of two factors. One is political, which is kind of playing into our hands at this point in time. And the other is our great, I would say, intellectual and engineering capacity and the people capacity that exists in this country, which is on par or better than anywhere else in the world. Okay? If it's unleashed and harnessed in the right manner and form. Now, you can do, I think we'll end up doing the latter first. Because I think waking, that part up is probably easier, but you're not going to get the second part in place, which is the infrastructure part in place, which takes time. And a lot of it is not in the hands of private entrepreneurs or things like that. So I think in this combination is actually where new age entities that support an environment of this nature by making it more convenient and perhaps trying to give you an edge or a value add over whatever is happening in the conventional form, might add some value to the section of people that are attempting to play this game and prevail and be successful at it, right? So, say for example, a company like ours, we are purely focused on cross-border freight. Unlike TVS, my big brother, I would say, who's focused on all aspects of this business. We've remained within the niche of international cargo transportation. And we attempted to digitize it, and I moved into that almost after 35 years of doing that in the traditional form. I was convinced that if we do not embrace and move towards a more technology-oriented form of managing this, we are never going to be able to add competitive edge to our customers, and we will just remain in that same pocket. And that's the mistake that companies make, that they tend to stay within the traditional mold in which they have been operating with partners and vendors that they've been operating in key areas of like logistics, right? For me, the uphill battle is really being able to impress a large Indian corporation today that they need to move away from a traditional relationship which they've had with somebody for 10 or 15 or 20 years to explore and experiment with somebody that is actually bringing something new to the table. So, answering one of the points here is, I think we are actually very happy to work closely with, say, automotive leaders to create and design something that actually works for them. Because we've got people that are doing it. We've got 100 engineers, 120 engineers that does only work in customizing the platform to suit respective industries. We work with pharma, we work with automotive, we work with retail, renewables, etc. But that is an opportunity that one must get. There must be a little bit more openness from the side of the trade that actually wants to bring in the new age players to be able to add value to them, because we have created that ability to be able to offer you those conveniences.
Correct.
And I think at the end of the day, it's about having to be able to have the convenience factor, the visibility factor, the control factors, the monitoring factors available to you at the touch of a button, right? That's really what a digital operator attempts to bring to you, making it much easier for supply chain managers to be able to manage the international segment of their business. Right? But that will call for a little bit more, I think, a non-business oriented approach of working together to create something that will work for everybody.
Cost to value.
We are not also experts in automotive industry. We need the help of automotive experts to help us to design and develop something that works, tweak this to work for them. Thereby, then we can actually have a better partnered way of moving forward here.
Point taken. Sure.
Just to respond or add to what he said. So typically when and as you know, we have 120 things that are running in the plants at any point of time. So whenever we try to bring in new change or something, particularly from a technology perspective, it's next to impossible to sell that idea down the line, because frankly, we are more worried about what we want to do next. So maybe one thought, as I heard him speak, is that if a business challenge, you hear a business challenge and then position the challenge, the technology to suit the challenge rather than the technology to be suited to the business. So that could be a easy approach. Like you look at a pilot, you try to understand what are your pain points. You have 10 pain points. Maybe 3 of these pain points I can tweak my product to solve your, particularly because given the current changes in global environment on freights are hitting the ceiling, right? So freight cost is a worry that all supply chain managers literally, it keeps them awake at night. How this is going to affect my P&L? How can I go back to my customers and get the money, etc., etc. So that's something that keeps us awake, literally awake at night. So there are many problems. So instead of a technology-oriented approach, if a problem resolution point of view and see how technology matches, might be one selling idea. Is what I thought as I heard you speak.
Sure, Pulkit, you wanted to come in. Yeah, I also had a question for you, but please go ahead.
Coming to the agility, the gap between the startups and the OEMs. So I would like to tell a story that happened with us. So at Metalbook, we do provide raw material to the ancillaries of the OEMs, and we do provide the processed material as well. So when we started, approaching the ancillaries, so there was ancillaries are your this traditional businesses mindset only. So at that point of time, they did not used to entertain us. So by repeated approach, we started giving them raw material. We added services like providing capital to them, etc. So over time, that trust got built, and what we saw that, and those ancillary owners saw that they were also growing with us. So that was basically driving a mentality change. Today, I can tell you very clearly, very frankly, that today if I approach any OEM directly, I will not be entertained because I have not proven my word to them. So that kind of trust needs to be shown from the other side as well. So if we are given that chance that we do provide quality material at a better timeline, and we are favorable for the growth of both of us, so that will be a business, in a very great sense. So that mentality change needs to be driven. Startups are very agile, so yes, that is true. But yes, we do not want to take any action which can be detrimental for both of us. So yes, a step needs to be taken from both sides. That is my point.
I would just want to add one point connecting to what he said and Rajesh said. Correct? I think definitely startups are very promising in terms of agility and speed, and also the ideas that they bring innovative. Correct? And but some of the challenges.
Is the mic working? This should be.
Is there a red light?
So if you look at this, this should be. Can you take this back?
It's okay now. Right, okay. Some of the challenges that we see as big corporates is the scalability of the solutions, and second thing is, as he rightly mentioned, it's not a one-to-one ready-made solution, correct? While the use case can be appreciated, but how that use case fits to your old strategy and how it is going to integrate it and make it more sustainable. Because we have seen, okay, not only in our company, we have also heard from some of our big consultants that many of the projects or many of these digital innovators become dormant after 6 to 8 months because of adaptation, correct? So that's one of the scars most of us have to think before we get into this one. While the idea itself is good in terms of a specific use case, but how to deploy it in a way that is integrated into your day-to-day operations and more sustainable, and thereby getting results. That's one of the challenges we need to address as manufacturers to integrate this one.
Yeah, you wanted.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on. My experience has been that there are different facets of how startups can actually partner with large organizations. A key area that being in supply chain I've noticed is that the traditional mindset that large organizations carry actually comes with a baggage of not being so data savvy when it comes to decision making. And startups have somehow figured out, because of the skill base that we have built up, is very agile in terms of using innovative ways to look at data that is available within the organization and use new techniques like machine learning and AI, etc., and throw back the same data back to traditional organizations to open eyes of looking at the processes in a very different way, and thereby actually facilitating some very radical decisions which otherwise the traditional organizations or large companies, including mine, uh, tend to rely more on experience and intuition, etc., alone. And I've noticed in my experience that this is an area where I believe startups have started creating an impact, and I think that needs to be encouraged going forward. And and this is good for the not just for the large enterprises alone, but from an industry as a whole, as well as facilitating the policymakers' plans.
If I can.
Sure, sure.
Now that we talk about a lot of startups earlier, I think probably the last 1 decade, whatever I've seen is that from a so-called traditional, players, which we don't want to test with anybody else, I think as a OEMs we have come a long way. I would proudly say that in multiple with examples. Being an Indian company, being an Ashok Leyland, I've experienced much more better. If it is a international company, then there is a lot of route through globally. Somebody has to come through. Even there also, I found in both cases, like a lot of incubation centers have come in, and wherein we started taking chances. I mean, even at certain point of time, standalone projects, how does it really work? As high as around 50 companies are working with us right now, which is, we don't immediately see a result of it, but definitely if it gets clicked up, I think probably at the end of the day, how SFOs, streets, every so many incubation centers and companies have come across. Recently, it also realizes two important things. One is that, as rightly said by Ramanan, is about the way digital savvy perspective, which generally OEMs have not experienced so far, whereas this team can bring in. But the second and important thing is that the way how we are able to maneuver these advantages to our own advantages in terms of new technologies, for example, not only in terms of digital perspective, not in terms of autonomous vehicle perspective, in terms of features which are coming in. And government that's the whole reason it is close to 126,000 startups have been registered in 2023, which probably was in less than 1,000 around 5-6 years back. Correct. So the most important thing which I always tell my people is that, the people who are working with us, the most important thing is the discipline. Enthusiasm without discipline will lead to a disaster. Passion without discipline will be a catastrophe. If these two things are realized by any of the partners who are working with us, probably I think that is what the both sides of the stories we always see. That's why 1 out of 10 companies do not survive, but whereas there are some people who really do that and work along with us and do that. But holistically, ecosystem perspective, the way government has been helping us, IIT Chennai, Madras has been doing a great job for us to really find out ways for bringing up here. We also have a lot of collaboration attempt on CSR perspective also. So there are a lot of places and avenues where we can work. And I think that is what the thing which India is moving towards this direction, like truly an American way of making it.
Possibilities. That's I would like to believe, the operative part. I'd like to come to you and talk about now the shortening life cycle for typically a product. You launch a new product. The time it takes for you to realize that this is a great product, or maybe it may not work, that is shortening. In that, keeping that in mind, changing consumer preferences, how does the supply chain need to be reworked, which the effort needs to put in, and hopefully some other startups probably will have a solution for that, where they can get the pulse of the market for you.
Yeah, there is a saying that world never been faster than as it is now, and world never be slow as it is now. That means like world is fasting, so like moving so fast, right? So in the sense it's applicable for every product, especially when it comes to our automobile. Shortening life cycle, it's not the forecast, it's happening. Any car, if you like, you can see launch just like first year it zoom up, and usually it used to take like 3 years or 4 years, and it used to come down. Now customer expects within the first year itself the refreshment of the product. That means like minor change or upgradation of the product. And third year, fourth year, always almost it looks like it's going to close its life cycle. Same way, like if you see the whole cycle of the development, typically automobile development, car, I mean to say car, it used to take you 5 years for development from scratch to make it reality production model. This is the two areas which we need to focus. So if you are designing and developing a product taking 5 years time and it is going to live for a year, then what type of agility is required in both spaces? Supply chain plays two important roles, two sides of the story. The first is actually like development stage. Now every OEM are looking to shorten this time. So now Chinese OEMs are leading this. They are developing maybe like 18 months to 2 years time. This is what all over the world is happening. What it's required, like usually supply chain actually like the sourcing, making like identifying suppliers, these to be like validation, all those things. This area, a lot of innovation need to come, the digital and as well as the simulation models, and the current environment, like a lot of like trade agreements and all, it through a lot of information. You need to make a best decision out of that, cost effective decision. So there actually technology has to be adopted in sourcing decisions and defining supplier locations. And also in the second phase of the area where actually the agility when it comes, it's not just 3 years lifespan. So what this month customer are asking cars, like next month the customers they're shifting to some other, they expect something additional feature in that car. So we continuously try to introduce the new variants. That means we need a lot of agility, how to manage this obsolescence. Suppose if you like, see, supply chain is not just transporting parts, right? Like you need from raw materials to making final product. So there is a huge process behind that. So everywhere, like the inventory area, like or like once you stop, there is a chain of inventory. If you don't consume that, it's a obsolescence. It's a huge cost. To consume that, you need time. So then, but customer will not buy that car or any product. So in that sense, how to be agile at the same time, how to optimize. If you keep too much of inventory, then you cannot be agile. Correct? If you zero the inventory, the disturbances, what's happening now, like any time overnight that some Red Sea crisis, and so many crises are coming, you can't survive. So this is where actually the supply chain has to focus, how to optimize our operations using predictive models, where always we need to ask what if this happens, what if, then only we can serve this one. This is the background what I'm trying to explain, because end of the day, like customer like expectations are changing, revolving, and we need to respond. That's the industry responsibility. So all of us, we need to start inventing our innovating our process as well as the way we work towards future customers.
Okay, let me ask a what if to you. So typically, and this is something I would imagine that you experience it every month, a customer who's looking to buy any vehicle that you manufacture, if it's the month of December, he'll say, why should I buy now? I should buy it in January. If it's not festival time, if it's July, he'll say, okay, I'll wait for festival discount. So I'm talking a wider picture, not just commercial vehicles. So how does the supply chain, the optimization part that he spoke, how does that happen in a situation? Because this is a very real problem that you face every month.
We have two challenges. No? One is from the optimization point of view to take care of inventory and take care of the pipeline. And second is from the fulfillment point of view, correct? So one of the common problems or common comments from any supply chain guy will be the forecast is not good or the variation is high. I think it is fading out. I think we have also realized as a supply chain guys, organization is realizing that that's how the customer's behavior is going to be, correct? He's going to be choosy, he's going to be changing his thoughts last minute. So I think more and more organizations, I would say, are realizing that you cannot expect a forecast to be as accurate, and you have to be prepared. So this is one side of the coin, which is conflicting to the fact that it is going to add up in inventory, correct? So this is where I would still believe the technology is helping us. I think there are definitely ways of using it. In past days where we used to traditionally look at Excel sheets and then look at seasonals, and it is going away. So technology is definitely helping us in terms of how precise we are doing it. And second important thing which we are doing, which also I think helps us is, which also started after COVID, I would say, having a transparent visibility of the complete value chain. No? As a manufacturer, earlier we only have a visibility of who's our tier 1 supplier, correct? When this all started, when COVID happened, or even just in Thailand, so it took almost months to be fact for us to even understand what is the impact of China to us, which are the parts that are affected, correct? We know suppliers were directly supplying to us, but we didn't. And it also happened. No? I could also come and say that when the Texas snowstorm happened in, I think, 2020, there was a lot of talk, and I was even thinking, what does it mean to us? What is the snowstorm in Texas going to affect in Chennai, correct? And then we understood, okay, there is something called wafer is going to, so it took a bad image for us to really understand the value chain. So I would say what we are trying to do is create a transparency in the value chain, correct? Make sure that from the raw material till the value chain could be tier. And there are cases where some of the components goes up to tier 6, tier 7. So understand that one. So that gives more visibility for you to where the impact is going to be based on the demand. So that, and also create a transparency in terms of what it takes to realize that one, correct? So that helps us to have a picture of what is the lead time it requires for us to react, and what is the minimum that we can do it. So this helps us to minimize the impact in terms of both conflicting targets of how fast we are able to turn around and how minimum we can. I mean, I would not say we can be a zero obsolescence, zero inventory, but keeping the objective of customer first and taking care of customer parity first, we can play around this one. But this helps us to minimize the impact and also to react faster. And I would say even today, if you have that visibility, telling the customer it's going to take X number of days, I think the acceptance will be far more than what it was past. So I would say the focus is more on creating more transparency across the value chain, and which will help us to be more transparent with all the stakeholders, which will help us to minimize the impact, I would say. That's how I would say.
Would you like to add to that?
Well, I mean, Muthu has talked about a lot of softer aspects as well, which is very important, is transparency. I'd like to answer a little bit more on a smarter way of managing it also, which is fundamental. Gone are those days, I fondly recall two Charles Darwin, who also talked about it is not the strongest species or the one which has got so much of power to do it. It is actually the one which is able to maneuver itself. That's why cockroaches have survived so many years. Whereas the other guy, Charles Fine, is also talking about clock speed. I still remember it was in 2002 I read this book. And it was all talking about the fashion industry, how agile it has to be, how things have to be. Probably over a period of time we realized that automotive industry has also become a fashion industry.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, so kind of the models which are coming up with, I would say that the day which we launch a product and go back, and the next day morning we have sit down for the next version preparations of all these activities. But having said that, supply chain is pretty important and critical in this entire aspect. While we are reducing the entire way how we are doing it, design to manufacturing perspective, from maybe 6 years to less than 2 years or so. But supply chain perspective has been using a two-pronged approach. One is how far you are able to do modular concepts, wherein it looks absolutely different, like the way children play with the game plays of blocks, where they can create multiple models with the same usage of blocks. How smartly you are actually design your products in such a way that you are able to maneuver it quickly and convert it into your new products. That's the fundamental of it. The second thing is about the way digitalization has been helping us. So supply chain is nothing but a bullwhip, which we call it as. A small amount of change, it comes into a larger extent of tier 7 or tier 8, where so much of a gap could happen. How far you are able to digitally connect through intranets and intranets, convert them into that, keep on communicating to them what exactly is going to change. I think these two things have really played us a very big way. And also as an industry, we have moved from, from a Toyota's perspective of Kairetsu, which is actually more of, you start believing the people, talk to them, and, tell them what exactly has been going across. And I think all these software as well as the digital, smarter way of it, I think we are able to manage this industry. Believe me, commercial industry hovers between 20 to 140% in quarter 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. That's how the entire cycle keeps happening. When the rain happens, the production goes down or the sales demand goes down. As and when the next level of it's like unlike a past car industry where at least we can say pointing towards festivals. This has got a lot of sentimental values attached to it. So we could actually understand by involving all these activities, we are able to convert and maneuver all those things. One of the platform called Avatar can give an option of close to 250,000 option to the customer. For him, it's much different, whereas in the back end, at least we're able to maneuver it across and manage it across. I think it's going to be a challenge going forward as well, but I think as the technologies keep going on, as we really move towards something like a blockchain, which is going to be their order of the day, maybe another 6-7 years, I believe, how, the companies like IBM and Walmart are doing it together. And it's one of the amazing example of how industry is actually going for a very big transformation. I think soon in India also we'll witness all those things, and it's going to be the future.
Okay. Rajesh, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, just to add on to what Mr. Muthu and Mr. Ganesh said, I think from our perspective, all the past, natural disasters or pandemics have actually taught us the importance of supply chain in terms of, we had 2 significant disasters in Chennai in terms of the rains. Yeah. Lot of disturbance in Chennai, but you had customers in North India who said, no matter what, we have to dispatch goods. Pandemic, you had lockout zones happening, street by street zones getting locked out. You had one factory not being there, but so I think it helps us visualize where our problems are very quickly, and because of that visualization, I think we are now better positioned to make it more digital. And look at the ratio of risk versus reward. You take certain bets, and of course, as the OEMs also focus on modularization and standardization, that's something that we also take a cue on in parts of our development, even from a component perspective. Not only the final product being variable, but even as part of a new product development, how much percentage is standardized to our existing child parts, how modular is this to our other variants that we supply. So those are KPIs I think that has come in over the last 5-6 years. And I think just to echo what they said, while supply chain has become more dynamic and more volatile, I think the industry has become more smart in trying to understand it and digitally manage it. And all our customers now give us electronic schedules. And as he rightly said, earlier we used to complain, the schedule is varying so much, you said so much, it's actually picking up so much. I don't hear that conversation nowadays. Like the schedule comes in, we try to figure out how to make it happen. I think it's also the bullwhip effect where the OEM schedule comes to us, we pass on the schedule electronically to our tier 2 suppliers, so that information technology has helped to reduce the impact of the bullwhip to a large extent, and I think also visualization of this has also helped. So.
Okay.
I just wanted to add on.
And if you can also add a little bit on the traceability part of it, because the regulatory requirements, the challenges that it is posing, if you can add that bit as well, please.
Yeah, I'll come to that a little later. See, one of the points that Mr. Muthu started by saying about fulfillment in the supply chain. So I just wanted to add another facet, which is around outbound logistics. The way the agility is increasingly becoming a very, very important aspect. If you look at aftermarket logistics and finished goods logistics, outbound, the intermediaries who are there need to also be as agile as the way in which the suppliers of manufacturers need to be agile. In terms of inventory management, in terms of their ability to quickly capitalize on the changes that are likely to happen in a short product cycle. That is one aspect that is increasingly changing because of the transparency and the visibility, like how I think the gentleman alluded to the transparency required through internet and intranet for suppliers, the OEMs, etc. That same mirror image of that needs to be available for the outbound logistics, the value chain as well. Typically, the traditional mindset says that as long as I've pushed my stock out of my premises, it's the headache and the risk is on the other guy who's bought it. But that mentality and mindset will not be sustainable going forward when the product cycles are becoming shorter and shorter. The second piece is also the way in which the consumption is changing. Automotive, some of the aftermarket, which used to be 2 to 3%, I think few years ago through online, has now, just like how it is happening in the consumer goods space, is also entering into double digits. And increasingly, you find people who are consumers of aftermarket auto parts are as savvy of using an online channel to procure. So which makes it all the more important for the outbound logistics chain to be ready to accept a changing behavior of online purchases of parts, online purchases of other services, and so on and so forth. So that's the aspect I wanted to touch upon.
Yeah. And a word on the traceability, because industry-wide action is happening on traceability. CI is getting very active, and there is move for regulation, not just in India. Several countries already have it. That challenge could become bigger for Indian companies because there are lawsuits possibly attached to it tomorrow if you default and all that?
Well, I don't think the problem has scaled up to an extent of becoming alarming at this stage, but yeah, we will just need to watch that space actually.
Yeah, maybe from a recall code perspective, there is a bonus on traceability up to the component level. So this again calls for quite a lot of significant investments in technology and how do I say, ensuring adherence. Okay, investment in technology is one thing, ensuring adherence is the second thing. It's challenging. While I think all of us have initiated baby steps, at least I'm talking from a component perspective, baby steps. We always had finished good traceability. Like we would be able to trace a part when it was produced, which day, which shift. We'll be able to have finished good traceability, but traceability right down to the raw materials, even within our ecosystem, leave alone the supply ecosystem, from a tier 1, tier 2 perspective is quite challenging. And I think this is a problem that will evolve and snowball, as if I were to use that word, and force us into actions. And that's one area where I'm sure the startups need to come up with some interesting ideas. Incidentally, in one of our factories, we did a traceability solution end-to-end with a startup. Yes, it was not as expensive as we would have done it with a more established player, but alluding to what he said, and this, I think, 3 years back we did this. Today, if I look back, has it met all our requirements? Maybe not. So to answer your question in short, I think, yes, this is a problem that we need to solve. We have solved it, we are taking steps to solve it. I'm not sure we have solved it entirely yet. That's my perspective.
Just to add a point, I think one is a regulatory framework. I think recall law is there. It is going to come very strong because we have seen in some market, Japan, for example. I worked there for 5 years. Very, very strong regulatory in terms of recall. And that's where traceability, I would suggest not to look at from a regulatory point of view, look at from the efficiency point of view, because there are chances that there are some defects can cause to customers. And forget the regulatory requirements which might come strong later. But even today, some companies, like in our company, we have a technical compliance requirement where if there is an impact, we need to do an intervention in the field, correct? If we had traceability, there are some cases where we are able to narrow down to specific. Otherwise, we need to go for the complete batch. We also done cases complete batches. So definitely yes. But the challenge that all of us have is today it is done when it is asked, correct? So we should slowly move on because it could be a worst, as we talked about in the first topic, correct? More and more Indian suppliers can become global. I think this is very, very important. It's a collective responsibility of OEMs and the suppliers to make sure that that is taken care so that the impact is lesser when there is a problem.
Okay, so you want to come? Sorry.
Yeah, just actually like traceability, as Muthu mentioned, actually like It's not regulatory point of view. As an industry, we need like suppose Renault Nissan case, like we maintain traceability for all critical components, not today, like for past years too. But one of the big challenge what we face actually, like digitalization is solving some of the issues. Even the process also we need to take care, because like most of our supplier companies mindset is like before dispatching they put the date, but it's not manufactured date. If it is not manufactured date and manufactured batch, there's no meaning of the traceability, right? So these are the challenges which we are going to face when we start to export such critical components to external world. So there actually the discipline, we should not see only point A to point B. We need to cover from the zero, from raw material to this one. How we can apply digitalization, and there is a huge opportunity for startups to do in different levels. It's not traceability is not just scanning a QR code or scanning a number or like that. There are various levels of those traceabilities which we can implement. That's what I feel.
Maybe if I just can
Sure,
add the traceability point of view, two interesting things which comes into my mind. One is that, as you said, not only in terms of quality perspective, the advantage is that we have something called as an eye alert, which also gets activated the moment the vehicle goes out of your plant. And unlike pass car or a two-wheeler which gets moved to the transportation, is all driven by certain set of people. So anybody who stops more than 2 hours, the alert comes back that this driver is stopping. There used to be days wherein drivers used to stop the vehicle and go to their hometown and come back and drive. So these really helps us in making sure that it actually reaches the place. But very interestingly, what happens, one of the customers, when I met last 6 months back, he said, your wiring harness having this manufacturing code date, I had this problem. I said, how did you find out? He said, he just took out a phone, and if there was a barcode, your component is there, just scan it across, it clearly shows as to what is the manufacturing date of that vendor, which is very easily available. So the customers become so smart enough to talk to that level that this is what is happening around and where exactly needs. So in both way, it has really been useful to us as well as for the industry to make sure that the efficiency goes up, and also it also assures the customers that the product which is coming out of your line is absolutely all right. So at the end of the day, I think every vehicle throws typically a car has got maximum amount of around 700 or 800 points of data gets captured in any mature company. As high as around 120 gigabytes of data gets stored in a day in a particular activity, whereas CV stores around 150 odd points, which is close to around half of it. So that's what the data which has already been started generating. And that gives a huge amount of opportunity for us and also for the startups to really play around and start working towards what can happen perhaps in that. So we can in fact predict the vehicle life, predict what is possible, issues which can happen across. We can even predict the driver's behavior as to what kind of a behavior which is happening, and also apart from doing a geo-fencing and all the other stuff. So India is a happening place, and probably we need to realize that more than actually what we have been actually exhibiting it to the world.
So that gets me to, again, the startup. Since we're talking of the opportunities for startups, how does the startup look to collaborate? While you mentioned the larger point that some companies may not be ready or open enough to work, what could be the principles which could help you get to the larger companies and make sure there is a proper structured business partnership?
So it's a very slippery slope, the start. Firstly, I think we must have a value proposition that really makes sense to anybody, whoever it is a prospective customer. And see, the problem we have is kind of a chicken and egg in the sense that all startups by default and by nature are new. So when you're new, you are not well known. When you're not well known, you don't have a place on the table many a times. So finding a way to scale that by actually catching the attention of companies for whom supply chain is a valuable component of their life. That I think is really, where the challenge really lies. And this is something that all startups will have by default, simply because you have not been there you don't have a vintage that actually has brand recall or brand value that big manufacturing companies know you for. So finding a way to get exploratory work, making a mark, gaining confidence and trust, and then building on it, that's the process that we have to go through, and there is a challenge there. But however, most of us have found ingenious ways of making starts. And once you've done it, then I think, see, this is a very collaborative ecosystem of sorts, meaning that supply chain heads in automotive, a large portion of them kind of know each other professionally in one form or the other. Many have worked together in the past. If you do some stellar work with one, I really think you can showcase that to others, right? While they may all be competitive at some form or in some manner, at the end of the day, I think the practices most of them follow are all by far and large, the same. So there is a certain way to do it. So I think that's really the best way to do this, is to find quality work that you can do with one or two sort of stellar companies in that vertical, and then use those case studies as a reference and build into the rest of the people. It takes a bit of time, and also because this area is so sensitive to the players in the automotive business, and they don't experiment that easily because the cost of experimentation is too high. So you have to find a way to scale that.
Pulkit, in terms of being able to find customers for the offering, how do you approach, and what is the value prop that you could look to offer to companies?
So we have worked very closely with the automotive industry. We do work with infrastructure and industrial industry as well. So we basically deal with the metals and non-ferrous product. So if we see out of the major consumers, which are the infrastructure, industrial, and the automotive industry is basically the one where the margin of error is very, very low as compared to other industries. So as we were talking about the traceability of material, for us, wherein we are dealing with metals and we are providing to consumers in infrastructure and industrial industry as well. So it is not a regulatory thing for us, but it is a mandatory thing for us. No, to show you a picture, I'll tell you. Just imagine that one coil, HR coil. The size of coil is somewhere around 6 feet tall. It's a diameter of 6 feet almost my height. And it weighs somewhere around 25 tons, 25 to 30 tons. And at any cutter, the service that is provided in which you cut the coil into a certain length, you will find around 200 coils lying as it is, 200 coils. The best part of this industry is if you have taken that coil from a primary manufacturer and if you have taken another coil from a secondary manufacturer, you cannot visually differentiate. Now, obviously, since the margin of error is very, very low, the automobile industry will use the coil that comes from a primary manufacturer. And these cutters, what they do is they will use a chalk or a pen or something to mark the coils, and that is how things operate in a practical manner. So when we ventured into this industry, so we saw that it has been driven down from a traditional mindset. Okay, these are the coils that are lying around. Okay, the coil number so-and-so is coming from this manufacturer and has to go to this customer, get it cut down. And obviously when you are operating so much dust and so many labors that are around, it is obvious that sometimes those numbers get missed or they get rubbed. So there is never a guarantee that the coil that was manufactured for a primary consumer goes to a primary consumer. That was a thing. So that is wherein the idea of traceability came to us. So for us, you will see that from the point of sourcing, we also have our own logistics channels. We do operate, we also have a third-party logistics. We do track each and every point wherein the truck is going. We have that traceability with us. And these are the offerings that we provide to the consumer, to the automobile industry if you're talking about. So one is that you are getting the material that you ordered and you paid for. So when it comes to automobile industry, we also provide them processed material. So that precision processing, so we have our own vendor base. So obviously, ancillaries, they know a few vendors and they know a few processors from which they get the material processed. But through our platform, since we have worked hard on developing that vendor base, we have worked hard on improving the processing capabilities. So yes, we act as an extended enablers to the automobile industry. So when you provide these kind of propositions to a ancillary, so obviously that's a opportunity for a mutual growth, and that has helped us.
Okay, point. Okay, I'd like to touch upon the point of sustainability because that, in the new scheme of things, again, there's a very, very strong regulatory element to that. The way India is unfolding its regulation around sustainability, the BRSR from SEBI has already taken effect about 12 months ago, and the regulation is, with several improvements, several changes in the regulation, it's only gotten more stringent. How does the supply chain ensure that the unfolding sustainability regulations, the unfolding is a very important part because that regulation is changing, could be adhered to? I'd like the three, particularly the larger companies, to answer, please.
I think that's a very big topic.
Yeah.
And we are trying to understand what it takes for us to come to that point where we say we are able to achieve that one, correct? So I think as an approach, what we are trying to do is go as a step-by-step approach, trying to understand. Because when it talks about sustainability, one, are we clear about our roadmap? And second thing is, in that roadmap, the major portion comes from supply chain. I mean, I'm not talking about the scope 3 upstream, which is the product. And the product is the easiest thing to do. It's a question of investment and the infrastructure readiness in the market, customer migration. So I don't touch that one. Looking at this context, we are talking about more from the supply chain point of view. In terms of percentage, if I talk about commercial vehicle industry, I can tell from my experience, the entire value chain, 3% comes from supply chain. It's a small percentage, but that's where the complexity is, correct? And around 5% comes from the manufacturing plant and 90% comes from the finished product. So finished product is a separate topic. Manufacturing is still within our control. So we have it's a question of investments and bringing in technology. So in terms of how we are making your scope 1 and scope 2 neutral. So we have defined a roadmap for us. So without clearly defining what it takes to do. So for us, I can talk about Daimler, we have said 2047 as our complete value chain neutral. Now, within that, we have said what is for us in manufacturing plant. So I could say in 2025, our plant in Chennai is, we say, will be scope 2 neutral, 100% neutral. So all our renewable energy. Today, we are at around 85 to 87%. I would say that's an easy step to do. It's a question of making some investment, going for renewable energy and doing it. The next one comes as scope 1, where we are still using diesel, propane, etc., etc. That's where we need to think about alternate technologies and how we do our painting and all. But the bigger challenge comes from our supply chain, where I said 400 plus suppliers, huge value chain we are going to talk about. So there, the approach is, the time is quite long, but approaches go step by step. So what is there we have to do for the next 2 years, correct? Starting with trying to understand the carbon footprint for those things. I think that's what we are doing it, trying to understand what is the carbon baselining for product-wise. Second thing, focusing on smaller elements around that one, green packaging, because we are looking at the complete system. And third one is, I mean, I would not say third one, that's the first one, is to bring awareness to the entire ecosystem. I think the first 2 years, since last year, we rolled out this roadmap for our thing. So we are focusing more on creating awareness, one, and trying to create the baseline, what it takes for us to do that one. And third one is active engagement of those suppliers. So we also created recently appreciations and awarding of some of our supply partners who are involved in green energy. You know, in fact, I mean, to be surprised, no, global Daimler network, global footprint, including the entire world, continuously last 2 years, suppliers from India got Green Mover Award. So means we are doing progress, but that's a big supply. So I would say breaking down into small elements, what we have to do as a manufacturer, it is well known, it's a question of time. What we need to do at the supply chain, I would say we have some visibility of what is to be done in the next 3 years, but it is going to be, that's how I'd say. I would not say we have a full picture of that one.
So Very well said by Muthu. So I'll start off with certain bold statements which you already made. So as a responsible Indian company, we said, when Government of India said 2070 by Honorable Prime Minister, so we need to be much in advance. So since our company has recently celebrated 75th year of our establishment, we announced that by 2030 our scope 1 and 2, we like to reach the carbon neutral by 2030, which is coming in the principles of manufacturing perspective. That puts a lot of pressure, but internal is good for us to really do that. And also by 2045 we need to be a carbon neutral company. So that's when we celebrate our 100th celebration. So 0 at 100 is our tagline. So just to do this activity, a whole lot of things are required. So I would say that I'll also touch upon our supplier partners also in this. But the most important thing which I realized that in the moment we start doing it, a lot of low-hanging fruits are there. I think probably that is what probably each and every industry should understand, even our own supplier partners. With an ROI less than 8 months, for the maximum of 2-3 years, you will be able to take back that money what you're investing on doing this and also doing good to the society. I coined a term called permaculture, which means that the forest doesn't require a rain in itself or some pump water to really make an ecosystem in itself. It has got a lot of dense forest. It brings in water, air, ecosystem, everything on itself. So even entire industry need to work in that direction. So it should be water positive. It should also be zero carbon emitting, or otherwise at least you have something in terms of compensating through the trees. As high as around 28,000 trees are there all across the plant. And also it has got a lot of wide ranges of varieties of birds and animals are there in the plant. So if you go to Alvar plant of us, you will find a lot of Neel guys going around. It also will try to make products along with you. So that's what really I mean it. So these directions are going in a stronger way. Governments, a lot of state governments have got a lot of possibilities in terms of renewable energy. Renewable energy is still a great source of India is such a good daylight energy stores available. With the onset of maybe a battery technologies coming down, maybe a stored battery storage, one of the nicest option available. So we are already close to the level of 65% right now. We'll reach around 98% by another 4-5 years time, and by 100% by New Year by 2030. That's what it is. Now coming back to vendors fraternity, thanks to very big responsible companies. I think I just put out around 100 top vendors. We found that close to 70% of the BART are from those vendors. We find that surprisingly, in fact, thankfully to them, they are also have been extremely focused. Some of them we learn from them. In fact, some of the activities are much better. They are in advance. Since they are also exporting to German or European countries, they need to really follow certain rules for so many years. I think their level of maturity is close to 50% already. So all we have to do is maybe maneuver them, help them, cajole them, learn from them, try to get advantage out of them. Apart from the regulatory, I think we'll be able to reach those levels also very soon. And rest of the things, leave it to the product, really start working on that. So that extent, I believe since a lot of countries taking a little back step throughout the globe, I think as a country, India has been really marching forward. And in a way, it is going to get beneficial to the holistic system of cost as well. That's what has been going on, and we like to continue to pursue the same way. I'm happy that every company is doing the same way.
So, Keerthi, in terms of Renault Nissan showing the way to not just India, possibly to the world, is that possible? And I'm talking sustainability.
Yep. Yeah, I talk about both some startups or supplier point of view as well as the Renault Nissan India. Actually, similar as Ganesh has said, we ought to have the target to reach carbon neutral by 2045, and also we are to almost the same level of 65% of green energy what we are using. So we are focusing on water, water conservation, and energy conservation plus the green power usage. So many things which we are doing at Renault Nissan. Example one which is actually a water point of view, continuously we track. For last 10 years we reduced almost 30% water usage per car basis to manufacture a car. And we don't discharge a single drop of water from Renault Nissan premises to outside. We recycle and recycle, even finally we use it for the gardens. So much of sustainability activities is made. But in basically, as Ganesh and Muthu were mentioning, actually sustainability The earlier days, people were thinking it's like a social service activity or a goodwill brand building activity. But it's no more like that. It's a business requirement. If you see like recent announcements are it's a carbon tax, which France, Europe countries are imposing on China, correct? So this will grow and carbon tax will become reality in the future. When carbon tax is become reality for exporting part or any commodity, that's become a basic requirement. It's not only in the manufacturing process, we need to see whole in supply chain, what like how much like carbon like we're adding it to avoid the carbon tax or minimize the tax. This will give a lot of opportunities as well as like a lot of focus will come. On top of that, each company point of view regulations will become tighter and tighter. So India is having, I think, energy independent by 2047 or something, and 2070 carbon neutral. So definitely regulations will change. This will become requirements rather than need as to like business to run business. You must have to fulfill these conditions. Both prospect like export point of view and local point of view is required. So my suggestion actually like are what we have to look actually like we need to look into like supply chain point of view, like sourcing. We have to start practicing that sourcing. Like when we are sourcing, we need to keep this in mind, and how to have that India point of view multimodal connectivity, especially like suppose like today our transport system is very, though we are having good infrastructure to bring it parts from Delhi to Chennai, we need to bring it by trucks. So, but if I bring it by train, then there is no connectivity from in the last mile or first mile, the multimodal. So this type of solutions, there are various, this is one example, but there are various such situations are there where the supply chain has to evolve with the new innovations to bring solutions to minimize the carbon impact.
Which gets me to you. The ball has been tossed in your court because of what kind of demands do companies actually make to meet their sustainability needs and ensure that they are ahead of the game? Because ultimately this is a social license to operate. That's the way it is emerging.
So definitely the BRSR requirements of SEBI have forced companies to think on these lines. So that's a very positive step that the government has pushed. Now, when clients come to us and demand certain requirements in terms of what's our carbon footprint, especially in terms of transportation or even in terms of the way in which we try to use green energy for our warehousing services that we do. We have started taking some baby steps in terms of using EV vehicles for short runs in terms of the part load transportation and so on. We've made some baby steps on that, but still the economics are still yet to be established in a authoritative manner. We cannot say that yes, it compares well with ICEs. But in the warehousing space, in terms of offering value to clients, when we actually do warehousing services, there is definitely a huge potential to use green energy to satisfy the client's requirements in terms of the way in which their products actually reach end consumer through a green channel or a green way. So that's definitely an opportunity that we are exploring and partnering with different clients. And we have embarked on evaluating few of our large facilities that we have across the country to make them sustainable in terms of energy consumption, in terms of usage of solar panels, in terms of the warehousing premises, trying to see how best we come up with some mandates around the planting of trees and making the workforce also sensitive to the way in which we are trying to promote a philosophy of renewable energy. The other aspect is also in terms of, a part of our business is also in packaging. Like for some of the automotive clients, we do kitting and sub-assemblies and so on. So the movement of the pre-pack work that we do is also in using sustainable packaging and reusable packaging. So it's starting to make some early inroads, but yes, definitely there's a huge opportunity on that front as well. Clients are actually they are welcoming these kind of initiatives. Otherwise, the packaging, the consumables are actually thrown out. So instead of that, if we are able to replace them with sustainable materials that are reusable, then it reduces the carbon footprint.
Rajesh, would you like to add to that? But again, since you mentioned you have 3 customers here, what are you doing for them? It'll be interesting to know that part and keeping the sustainability factor in mind.
Understand. So while we have not made any forward-looking statements on what our roadmap is,
And we'd stick to the broader thing.
Yeah.
So let's not.
but having said that, we have been doing sustainability to be financially sustainable as well. So I think we are not doing sustainability for sustainability's sake, but we want to be financially sustainable. So sustainability is also a focus area. So let me add on to what I mean by this. So in the plants that are based out of Tamil Nadu, our renewable energy is north of 75%. We don't do so much of scope 1. For us, scope 1 is not a big focus area because we're more an assembly kind of a plant. In some of our other plants, due to regulatory constraints, unfortunately our regulations on usage of renewable power is not consistent across the country. So in certain countries, in certain states, there are certain restrictions which prevent us to being at the same rate of renewable energy penetration as we are here. And of course, we tick all the other boxes, renew, and I think that's also a big push from our customers. We do quite a lot of recycled packaging, water consumption. We are water positive, and I think 3 of our plants we are water positive. We focus on capturing metrics. So we look at it gate to gate, right? Like gate to gate, scope 1 and scope 2, where we are, and focuses on improving year on year. Can I be 10% better this year than what I was last year? So that has led us to be where we are today. And of course, as both of them mentioned, some of our customers particularly in Europe, so a high focus on renewable energy is sort of given as a precondition for us to even be part of the bidding process, right? So of course, it's a big focus area, and I think the government while the government is making reporting of all this visible, it will also be good if there is some fiscal advantage like there in the developed countries. There are these green financing. I don't think that has yet come into India. That will also encourage smaller companies like us to focus more as well. That's my 2 cents.
Pulkit, the innovation done by startups and that something that brings in efficiencies for companies. Would you like a comment on that as well? That's a slightly broader question, but it allows you to talk about what can be done as well.
Since we are talking about sustainability here, I'll tell you a figure that if you talk about steel, because that is the relevant material here, almost 62,000 tons of 62,000 gallons of water is needed to produce 1 ton of steel. Manufacturers have been taking their own steps when we talk about working towards green steel. Obviously, we also need to take a few steps when we talk about accommodating that kind of a change in the industry. If you see the budget, if you see the national steel policy, in the next 10 years, India will go on a boom. If we talk about minerals markets and especially the steel market. So China produces somewhere around 1 billion ton of steel in a year, and India is currently somewhere at 130 million ton, 140 million ton. And in the next 10 years, we are planning somewhere around 300 million tons. And obviously, with the carbon emission norms coming in place, so there has been a development when we talk about the green steel. It is not so very easy to turn to green steel as it is, because there's a lot of infrastructure change and technology change that is needed. But the seriousness that is being shown when we talk about the manufacturers, it is commendable. And now, since we are sitting here, we are talking to the giants of the consumer vehicles, passenger vehicles, and we can see that that kind of seriousness is here as well. So when it comes to intermediaries like us, when we have to facilitate that connection between a manufacturer to these giants, so we are also at a nascent stage. If we talk about at a nascent stage, that we do have a certain things in plan. But yes, in the coming 2 or 3 years, you'll start seeing that change on a very broader level.
Ramkumar, would you like to add to that the innovation part of it, which will help your agility to translate into the activities of the partners as well?
Sure. No, to the extent that I think we only exist because we are ready to innovate, right? So that's like a start point for us. And like I mentioned to you, in every single startup, either they have a very unique idea, or you at least have to take an old idea and be able to innovate greatly on that idea. So in our kind of very traditional business, we can't sort of reinvent the wheel. So we are completely depending on our ability to innovate, which means right from structurally and fundamentally offering something to the customer in a very innovative form to continually upgrading by way of innovating. This is something that is very integral part of the DNA of a startup enterprise, because we really have nothing else to bring to the table in terms of our size or capacities or whatever, which are all largely in the growth phase, right? So we spend a lot of time in trying to talk about what we can do to continually innovate every single aspect of what we do, right? So like I said, sometimes it's a matter of being able to catch the concerned target audience's attention to what we've done. But irrespective of that, I mean, whether we are commercially being able to exploit it or not, innovation is the bedrock on which any startup enterprise, particularly in supply chain, will exist or continue to exist. So there is, it's not something that you do as an afterthought, or it's not something that you do as value add. I think it's the most important part of existence for a startup enterprise like us.
Okay, one final topic which I think is very important, and I'll focus on you, Ramanan, for that. And well, it matters to everyone, but you're a supply chain focused company. Given what we are talking about for the entire country and the wider picture of that China Plus One strategy, the number of supply chain professionals for tomorrow, that needs to go up dramatically. And that could change, and in a dynamic situation. So which is why the people who get trained for tomorrow, they need to be very dynamic in their own learning, and so should be the curriculum for that. What needs to change so that we are ready for that future?
That's a very pertinent question. In fact, we've been having conversations in our company to see how we can scale up the availability of the supply chain talent across the country. There are forums that are available. There are engagements which we do with academia to see how relevant the curriculums can be done in order to actually drive students' interest towards supply chain related skills. I see it in two tiers. One is at the way in which the labor force is getting continually upgraded in terms of the skills that are required either at the floor level in terms of skills to use hybrid automation capabilities, or forklifts and tow trucks and so on and so forth. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and we are nowhere near that. While the government is trying to facilitate and promote standardized curriculum across the country through Institute of Logistics and other forums, I think a lot needs to be done on that front. In fact, we are trying to see how best we can use that gap as an opportunity to fulfill some of our social priorities that we need to fulfill. The second is in terms of the supply chain related skills that are required at a managerial level. And happy to see a lot of institutes across the country have now started offering courses on supply chain management. In fact, I had 3 or 4 summer interns who were doing business administration but specializing in supply chain. So I was very happy to see that the interest of the young students is also getting diverted towards getting expertise in this particular area. Especially after COVID, I think there has been a significant shift in the mindset of the people in terms of the criticality and the opportunity that this particular area can offer. So one is in terms of the relevance of the curriculum, and second is the availability of the infrastructure. So in both places, I think steps are being taken. For example, in IIT Madras, I was part of a discussion where we are trying to co-create some relevance in terms of the analytics bit in supply chain. How to use analytics in supply chain to drive efficiencies and productivities and so on. And it was very clear that the academia today are very open to upskilling themselves and trying to make it industry relevant. So that is one piece. The second piece is around the availability of institutes and infrastructure and so on. I think there's a huge gap. There's a lot more needs to be done there.
Okay. Also, one point which I thought we might have missed, the switch from ICE to EVs. I mean, I know it's spoken to death, but that importance of the supply chain adjusting to that as dynamic as the industry is, what do we need to, or what is happening, what do we need to do perhaps?
Very interesting actually, like everywhere, like EVs are the thing which
no conversation is complete without EVs being a part of them.
Yeah, you're making sure that you're towards end at least you're including that. So the first actually like the customers, the understanding point of view, or awareness point of view, or intention point of view, or orientation, it's definitely towards EVs now. That was not before. It's not that EV was not existed. EV was existed like 8 years back also. The people were made EVs at that time also. That importance is coming because of the regulation and people interest. That means now actually like it's the industry's responsibility to find viable solutions. That's where actually the sticky point, at least for India point of view. What is there today, India? We are largely depending on the import for major EV components, starting from battery. Even we don't have rotor. Motor also, like a rotor, which is the magnet component. There are many critical components which we are importing. With this importing structure, like unless we address these structural issues of importing and localizing, and also if you see the most of the components that e-powertrain, which we call, let's say electronic like EV powertrain, the most of the parts actually just fragmented and suppliers are producing in a small quantity. Unless we use the economies of scale advantage and building the big facilities and investing in those things, so we can't make India as a EV market. That's my personal view too, and as well as like even my understanding on the whole subject. And the other area is like raw material. Of course, the biggest problem is like raw material. Like even if you want to produce batteries in India, what is the source of raw material? So there are many supply chain issues which has to be sorted out. And of course, once that ecosystem has been sorted out, then there is a forefront active with this one, like charging infrastructure. All these things, I don't have much doubt on that, because we are pretty good. Like once the industry starts and customer base increase, automatically everything will start to happen. Like how mobile towers and everything happens, the same way charging infrastructure. That's not the big thing. That's what I feel. But main, the ecosystem back end has to be developed. That's where the supply chain is the major part.
So in terms of the buses, we saw at COVID times really that takeoff, the public buses that policymakers ensured that was purchased and pushed at that time. Now that switch, if I may use the word switch, is happening.
Yeah, I mean, like as you rightly said, EV is a very interesting topic, as like positive and negative. It has got both. As we saw sudden upsurge in the interests of the international market, suddenly we are finding Americans and Europeans are taking a little back step. But having said that, as a country, we always being a role model to that. Multiple industries are working in multiple ways. Well, the two-wheelers have already imbibed 100%. Four-wheelers are gradually picking up 30%. Buses in a much more bigger way. Of course, our core industry of truck will take a little bit more time. So each and every industry is moving in multiple steps in a different perspective. But of course, as you said, buses are real, takeoff. We already sold more than 1,000 vehicles, 1,000 buses on the road. We have order books of more than 2,000 numbers on the line. But having said that, as rightly said by Keerthi also, so what is most important is that which technology, and this is going to be done internally. That's what is most important in terms of batteries and the way how batteries actually cost is coming down. At certain point of time, what is most important is the total operating cost. We call it as a TOC, is a mantra in any commercial or bus segments are concerned. As long as that is being played around here, we'll have to play both ICE as well as EV together. So the first point is that it's not about only EV, it is about alternative energy. Alternative energy comes from CNGs, LPGs, that also really gives a huge advantage to the country. Hydrogen ICE is one of the biggest, another maybe potential opportunities available. And of course, next will become EV and also maybe at certain point of time fuel cell. So we don't see as a single EV as a constant. While we are ready with all the technologies available, I think, I believe diesel is going to stay for more. And we need to make sure that we make a clean vehicle as good as the way how the technology or the regulations keep changing, and also keep yourselves ready for all those technologies. And that's what the strategy has been. You keep launching the product as the customer sees the value of TOCs. Currently, the cost is around 2 times. And also, he has to see a value of, in terms of how much is it going to cost in terms of total operating. It is not about, it's only a point A to point B movement. It is actually a livelihood of the people are involved in this process. So keeping that responsibility, it's going to be very interesting scenarios in the next few years to come.
I can add, I think mostly covered by Mr. Rajesh. I think adding to that one, as he rightly said, at least from the industry that where we are in commercial, it's not going to be immediate. So that puts additional challenge, correct? By the end of this decade, as he rightly said, all the product lines should be available, depending upon how the market is going to migrate. We don't know the scalability, but from a manufacturer side, we have to be ready. So it means we have to do everything to make sure that we have the product ready, cost under control, etc., etc. And at least at this point of time, we see the next decade is going to be the transition phase. And that puts all the more pressure in making sure that we have to manage both these technologies. As I said, it's not one. EV is one technology. On the other side, we have multiple options here. So it's going to add more complexity than what we could see in the last few years, correct? This is one of the biggest challenges we see as an industry in the next decade. It is going to be multiple fuel options available before another 1 decade where we could see the transition happening to 1 or 2 fuels like it is going to be. So it's a real challenge. On top of it, also the scalability, material things, and more importantly, also one more element when it comes to handling of people is the handling of this high voltage thing, which calls for a huge amount of training and upskilling of people, correct? It's a high safety topics, correct? It's not the way that we do the traditional training for current system. That's one of the bigger topics which we need to handle inside the operations area. So these are the major elements. It's going to be more interesting, but adding more complexity. I think all these learnings that we had in this post-COVID era should help us to sail through that, is what we believe.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Just a little bit to sum up some of the conversations. 300 billion automotive industry is the opportunity that we're talking of. How important is that? You use that number and it kind of got stuck in my head. The IT services industry is about $260 billion, so a little smaller than that. And look at the influence IT services has had on India and as a country and as the name it has given to India. So that opportunity, I would imagine, exists with the automotive industry now as it scales up, because we're talking of a bigger scale here. We need to benchmark the quality and consistency for OEMs, for the components industry, and also for the OEMs as well, so that Indian products can be accepted in other parts of the world in a bigger way. Apple suppliers, well, that caught my attention. Inquiring about supply chain solutions, that kind of caught my attention. Okay, low cost to a high value nation as a manufacturing nation, I think. So because I took down these notes, I'm just trying to repeat that. Well, 50 companies, I'm sorry. I hope someday it's 50 countries as well. But 50 companies working with you. I'm presuming they're all the startups that you spoke about. So that's something, that's the spirit like a lot of the startups would also love to hear. Sustainability roadmap, the awareness for the ecosystem along with packaging, and engagement with the suppliers. Another point. BRSR has forced companies to act, but that's for everyone's good. I think that was a very important, because that's the way business will be done in future. And well, some of those lesser important points, but that's about it. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of the conversation today. Thank you indeed. Thank you. We'll take some pictures. We'll need to do some pictures. And, well, Virjinder also has something.
Nothing. I have nothing to add on, but a very, very interesting and an engaging conversation. Thank you so much for all the panelists to accede to our